Hello, I'm Ronnie Eldridge, and welcome to Eldridge and Company. I'm visiting today with Sam Roberts, a man who knows more about New York City than anybody else I know, and an old and good, he's not old, he's a very good friend. He's had a wonderful career, Sam, right? Starting as managing editor of the Sun, the Daily Sun at Cornell University, and then the Daily News, and then the New York Times for a long time. My husband always said, you know New York better than anybody. So let's talk about New York, all right?
Okay, I don't think I know it better than anybody because I learn something new every day. And I think that's what's so great about being a reporter in New York, curiosity. And of course, New York changes all the time, so you can never know everything.
The excitement of it. So this city, which has been badly hurt by the pandemic and will get on its feet. We all know that because it is so resilient. But right now it's in a sort of a crisis, I guess. And we're having a mayoralty election. And I don't really know anything about the candidates. So how are people going to be able to vote the leadership of this city?
That is a very good question. And there are two things that strike me immediately. This is February, and we're talking, of course, about a primary in June. A lot can happen, as we've learned in the past couple of years between now and then. One thing is there are so many candidates. We're talking about roughly 30 at this point. And how can you possibly get to know them? The second thing that is fascinating is how many of them are not out of the ordinary political establishment, if you want to call it that. They're not out of clubhouses. They're not out of people who were elected to prior offices. A lot of them are newcomers. They are either coming out of business, they're coming out of appointed positions, which may or may not be good.
Nonprofits and community organizations.
That's right. That doesn't mean they're more or less qualified. And it's just striking how many of them there are. And the third factor that makes it very tough to predict in this election is the introduction of ranked choice voting. So if you have 30 people and you've got to pick 5 candidates in order of who is your favorite, first of all, at this point in the election, in the campaign, I'm not sure anybody could name 5 candidates. And secondly, it means it is quite possible for everybody's second choice to win. So how do you handicap that 3 or 4 or 5 months in advance? I think the answer is you don't. And if you look at any poll today that shows Eric Adams or anyone else is the front runner, it is just totally meaningless. The second thing that concerns me about your question is the lack of local news coverage, Ronnie. You know, this sounds maybe a little bit self-serving to say, but when I was at the Daily News, when I was city editor there, the Post, the News, the Times, certainly to some extent, New York Newsday, there were a lot of publications covering local news in New York. You could argue how well we covered it, but we were there. City Hall, our bureau had something like 8 people at it. Now the Daily News doesn't even have a newsroom of its own. It's all remote, it's all digital. And I think that is a big loss. We have certain substitutes. We have things like The City, a news service online, which is coming along. We have things like Gotham Gazette and City and State and blogs that do their best, but I don't think we have enough good, solid local news coverage. And I think that affects civic engagement. It affects accountability of public officials. And I think it's a very big loss to this city.
I agree with you totally. There was one article, I think today in the paper, in the Times, that Andrew Young has the flu. And in it, they mentioned a few other things, but that was the only mention of it.
That's right. And we had more coverage the other day of someone dropping out of the mayoral race than he ever got coverage going into the race. Right. So, you know, how do you cover a campaign like that? And, you know, we just have to do a better job.
And as you said, they're so different, some of the candidates. But before that, what I don't understand is why hasn't there been a movement to revert back to when the primary used to be in September, at least for this year, since all the predictions are that by the summer, the city will be much better and it will give the main candidates a better chance to campaign. I haven't read
That's a good point. Arguably, the point in having the primary in June was always, if I remember correctly, to give the candidates more time after getting the nomination to
Right,
campaign for the November election.
right.
That's sort of moot at this point for a couple of reasons. One, as you say, the city is more likely to be in better shape. More people are likely to be more active after vaccines and with luck opening up after the pandemic. And also in a mayoral race, barring something unforeseen, which of course can happen, the Democratic nomination is still likely to be tantamount to election for mayor. So, why have the primary in June? Why not wait more time till September? The fact is, though, it is in June. It's not likely to change. So we've got to just live with that.
And the other important thing in this primary is that there are going to be, I think, 30 new members in the city council. The city council is, the voting for members of the city council is a citywide disgrace because people don't pay any attention to it. They don't vote in them. People get elected with what, 9,000, 7,000 votes in a district. I mean, it as you said, civic engagement, it's so important. And the newspapers in the past have played such an important role in it.
Well, Ronnie, let me, if I can throw it back to you, how do you get people engaged? You're from the West Side, where there was always more engagement than most places.
Yeah.
How do you get people active in at least knowing who their candidates are, much less anything else in the campaign?
Yeah. I haven't compared numbers to the past numbers, but we always did a lot of street campaigning, a coffee clutch campaigning, a personal call invitations to, to meet. I mean, it was a more grassroots campaign, I think. It's always been hard because we don't pay enough attention to the city council, and consequently, the city council doesn't play an important enough role in the city, I think.
Or it does, but doesn't get noticed enough.
Yeah, yeah. It's interesting also, I think, in this race, because we've got our own polarization. I mean, are we in the same picture as we are nationally, only within our party? We've got somebody who is taking, somebody will take money from this person or that person. We have a candidate who wants to make decisions with the community input and it's like participatory campaigning. And we have another candidate who's sponsored by the partnership and the real estate and finance communities. And it's so different. But the problem is he's really a good, I'm talking now about McGuire. He's really a good candidate.
Yeah, so why should he be disqualified?
Who say, look at his backing. We can't vote for him.
But why should that disqualify him, though?
Because there is this hostility in lots of parts of the city against real estate developers, against the finance community, Wall Street. I mean, that's a living factor, but we're increasingly, I think, boxing ourselves into some restrictions that we shouldn't have.
Well, is that because you and I are getting, let's not say older, more mature, and we can think about this a little less in the box? And I mean, I can't understand the people who want to defund the police, for instance. I mean, to me, you want to give more money to the police so we can have more of them engaged in, community activities, social activities, better training, certainly, so there aren't things like chokeholds, not just some sort of blanket defunding of the police. There are too many kind of knee-jerk actions. We're talking about a minimum income. Great idea, but what does a mayor have to do with that? We don't seem to be, and I know this is very early in the campaign, but we don't seem to be talking about issues that a mayor can do something about, that we can build a consensus around in a time of polarization. People are sort of skirting issues. It's not as bad as in San Francisco, where they're renaming 44 schools for wacky reasons, but we're not facing up to issues in a way I think we ought to be.
Well, we did back when I worked at City Hall, we did like the Vietnam War. If you were for it, you were off our list. But you're right. I think that we've, instead of having large movements, we've segmented into other movements, and that's the way you get. And the use of the internet. I mean, there was no communication like that. Who could ever thought of that we would do that, right?
That's
We were
true.
both, you've become a specialist with the Lindsay administration, and we were both in City Hall at that time. So is there any difference? I mean, is there a Sid Davidoff or Barry Goddard in this administration?
Well, most of your viewers probably never heard of them, of course,
Right.
but they were the go-to guys, the people who got things done in government. I'm sure there are people like that today. I don't know if they have the same amount of leeway. You can argue maybe they shouldn't. You know, we had Barry Goddard dealing with mobsters to quell civil disturbances. You could argue whether that was a good thing or not. You could certainly say it worked. And, you know, would that be politically correct today? Would that be allowed today? Would that be denounced today? I think it what probably would be. So would there be that same sort of flexibility and able to do things? I'm not sure. It was a much more, in a sense, open government in that people were more accessible, including the mayor. One thing that I found baffling in the certainly early de Blasio years was how inaccessible the mayor was. I remember covering Lindsay and his successors. You almost couldn't get away from them. Anytime you wanted to ask them something, they were pretty much accessible. And de Blasio holding news conferences with only questions on a certain subject or refusing to answer questions. If I were in, you know, covering City Hall at that point, I would have urged all of my colleagues to just walk out and boycott the press conference. You can't not answer questions if you're the mayor of New York City.
So the press is, you think, a little different, and as the mayoralty is different.
I think the things have become a little bit like Washington, a lot more formal. And you see that in covering of campaigns, there's a greater distance because there's not as much street campaigning, there's more social networking, there's more on TV, there's less personal contact. And when somebody becomes the mayor, there's less personal contact, I think, certainly than there was before. Now, does that mean the government runs worse or better? I leave that to others to decide. And one of the things that fascinates me, and of course you can't really measure it qualitatively, is, and you would know this better than I would, we now have term limits, we now have public financing of government. Do we in fact have better government now? I'd like to think the answer is yes, but again, I'm not entirely sure. When we had the Board of Estimate, and there was a lot of horse trading among the board presidents and the top city officials, we always didn't know what was going on, but you know, things sort of had a way of working out.
And we had powerful political parties.
Well, that's another thing. Who has power today? Now, maybe it's good that power is much more diffuse today. But of course, the flip side of that is it's very hard to get a lot of things done.
It's interesting. I mean, if we went from Dinkins to Giuliani, Bloomberg, and now there's no really consistent thread through it all, is there? I mean,
Well, you know, what strikes me is that maybe this is misplaced over time, but I have a lot of faith in the electorate. And if you look at that string of mayors over time, Wagner had run his course. He was a better mayor than I think people give him credit for. But after 3 terms, enough, the city was tired, and Lindsay was clearly a fresh face, and much of the public wanted him. After 2 terms of Lindsay, the city was in dire financial straits. The city was tired of all the noise, the ruckus, and Beam was the guy who knew the buck and was the obvious choice to be the mayor. Turned out he didn't. And we wound up in bankruptcy or near it. Not his fault, but he was the fall guy. And then Koch came as the cheerleader who rescued the city with a lot of help. And then after 3 terms, someone soothing, someone more serene like David Dinkins. After Dinkins, Dave do something because crime was going up. Giuliani was the perfect answer. And after Giuliani, of course, with 9/11, and without 9/11, I don't think it would have happened that way. We wanted someone who was capable of running the city, a businessman, and we got Mike Bloomberg. So there was a logic to
So what do
all
we
of
need
this.
now?
Well, that's a very good question. And we have usually elected someone who is right for the time. And who do you need after de Blasio? I think you need someone who can manage. I think you need someone who can project a sense of optimism because the city is down and can project a sense of not the usual solutions, but a sense of pragmatism, that I'm not just going to promise idealistic things that are utopian, but these are the 5 or 6 or 7 things that I'm really going to try and do as mayor. And here's why they're going to make life in the city better for you. And after 4 or 8 years, this is why the city is going to be a better place.
It's true. I think that's a very good analysis, and it's very interesting. And tell me, where did you go to high school? You lived in Brooklyn and you grew up in Brooklyn. What high school?
Went to Tilden High School in Brooklyn, the same place as Victor Gottbaum and Al Sharpton, actually. Not the same years, though.
Oh, okay. Did you have civics?
We had, I'm not sure if it was called civics, but we never had enough of that. You know, we had in elementary school, I think even junior high school, the Pledge of Allegiance, you know, which, you know, was sort of done by rote. But I don't think we ever had real civics classes. We had history classes, but we never had, you know, the kind of history we ought to be learning now, what really happened, who was really left out of the picture, who really had power then. And that's not to you know, devalue people like the founders who, you know, when you go back and look at what they did and under the circumstances, it was absolutely extraordinary. But they weren't perfect, and they were the first to admit they were trying to form a more perfect union. The very, you know, essence of that being that they knew it was imperfect. Now we're looking back and finding a lot more imperfections, but that doesn't mean they can't still be cured.
But it also was where it was emphasized about your role as a citizen, about how the responsibilities you have to contribute to your community. I mean, I got all of that from junior high school and high school. And I feel people who don't get it are really deprived. And ultimately we're deprived because then they don't vote and they don't understand what's happening.
Ronnie, why are they not getting it? I went with my mother every time on election day to vote. You know, I was allowed to pull the lever.
Right.
I worked licking envelopes, I hate to say, in a Democratic club on Church Avenue in Brooklyn. Finally decided I was not going into politics. I'd rather go into journalism. Maybe that was a cop-out on my part because I didn't have to have an opinion. I could just cover other people who were doing the real stuff. But you know, you're right. I don't get the same sense of civic involvement, although there are an awful lot of people involved in politics today. And you saw that in the presidential campaign just passed, a lot of people running for office. And some of them are very good and well qualified.
They don't have the opportunity to participate because it's money and internet, you know, advertising, television, right?
That's true. They have a very tough time getting themselves distinguished from the rest of the pack, especially in a mayoral race like this, where you, at this point at least, have, you know, more than 24 candidates.
No, I meant the people like you doing the envelopes and stuffing the envelopes. There's not that opportunity anymore. You can't as an average person get yourself involved. Because
well, you can still knock on doors. You can, you know, still do stuff like that, but it is harder. There's, you know, since there's less to do and less reliance on that kind of stuff, and frankly, less commitment, I think.
Right. Do you think, as a result, though, of your transition and all the right candidates, that the government is better than it used to be. Let me just say one other thing. We grew up, I don't know about you, but my parents through the Depression and Roosevelt. And that, I think, was a very important thing for a parental influence on me. You said you went to vote with your mother.
I thought, well, I think there was a feeling that government was good. This was coming out of the Depression and coming out of the post-war period, that government had done good things, that government had saved the country, if you will. And there was a faith in government. There was no sense of an anti-government feeling. Unfortunately, that developed among my generation with Watergate, with Vietnam. And it's funny, I just got finished rereading David Halberstam's The Best and the Brightest, and I would recommend that to anyone, even if they've read it before, because it just shows how the brightest, smartest, wisest, well-intentioned people totally screwed everything up. So if people like that make mistakes and then are wedded to them and live with them and can't escape them, imagine what the ill-intentioned people wind up doing. It is terrifying that people cannot get up in the middle of something like that and say, I'm sorry, or I made a mistake, or this was the wrong thing. And you see in the Trump administration, I mean, these people sort of coming out at the last minute for, is this a profile of encourage, or is it totally self-serving at the last minute to say, I quit, this is too much. Well, where have they been for the past 4 years?
Right. But of course, he fired people who did come forth. So that was always a problem. But what about our members of the Senate and in the House? They've forgotten why they're there, haven't they?
Well, it's going to be very interesting to see. We now, I guess, for the first time, have a House Speaker who's from New York. Obviously, he can't bend over too far backwards to help New York, but let's see.
You mean the majority?
Yeah, the Senate Majority Leader, I mean. Let's see what he's able to do for New York, because New York City and state are desperate for federal help, like other cities and states around the country. And what we've seen so far in the federal, I won't call them bailouts because they're not that, in the federal help for conditions coming out of the pandemic, is very little, if anything, for state and local governments, and they are hurting enormously. I don't think many of the candidates running for mayor have any sense whatsoever of how bad the finances of the city really are.
But you just raised an interesting point. How do you split the interest of your constituency and to do what you should know, the morality of your tenure? I mean, we see what's happening now in the United States Senate, or what happened in the House. I mean, people are saying it's not what my constituents want, but is that the only thing? You could see what happened to Cheney.
No, I think people in public office, and you know this certainly better than I do, you're supposed to be a leader. You're not supposed to run behind your constituents. You're supposed to lead them along to what you think is the right way, the best way. And if they don't like it, they can kick you out of office the next time. And if you're so afraid of being kicked out of office, if that's the only thing you care about, then you shouldn't be there. And unfortunately, these people are so concerned about the next election, they're so concerned about incumbency, that becomes the only thing that counts. And in the House, especially where they've got a 2-year cycle of running for reelection and raising money, it's almost understandable. That's all they do.
Right. It's a terrible way of governing, having to raise the money that you need. Are you writing any books? A book?
I am. It's a sore point, of course, because I'm late on it. But I'm writing another history of New York called New York, a Biography. And it's a 400-year history of the city told through about 24 people you never heard of. Some of them I'm sure you heard of, but they're relatively obscure people who were either transformative in shaping New York or were emblematic of some sort of transformation in the history of the city, from the founding of the city to up to the modern day.
Do you have a title for it yet?
Well, New York, a biography, I
Okay.
think is what we're going to go for.
Yeah, and it's in the part, it's the culmination? No, it's not really. It's just another dimension of
It's
the book.
just the next.
Well, I'm certainly looking.
As I told the Times, I'm too old to retire, so.
Are you the longest member of the editorial part of the Times?
I don't think so. Certainly not by longevity at the paper.
Oh,
I
that's
am
what I meant.
one of the oldest
I-
on the news staff, to be
Yeah.
sure. Since I started at the Daily News, I hate to say in 1968, right out of college.
Yeah, and I started in politics in 1969, essentially.
We were both babies then.
Well, it's always been a pleasure to know you and to talk to you. And actually, I really love you. So thank you. And I'm looking forward to the book.
Ronnie, me too, and I love you too.
Thank you.